The President, please be seated. The court is now back in session. Before we hand over to counsel for Mr. Ieng Sari, the chamber wishes to ask counsel as to how much time would he need to put questions to the civil party, and as to whether time has already been decided, allocated among the other team.
Thank you, Mr. President, and Your Honors. I have approximately 15 minutes left, and I believe that the Kyusumpon team may have some time. But I was told earlier that there was no time, but now I'm being told that they want to ask some questions. But I have about 15. I may be able to do it in less than 15 minutes.
The President, thank you, counsel. But please make sure that you and the counsels for Mr. Kyusumpon allocate some time for the civil party himself to voice his statement of suffering.
We will, Mr. President, we will, and thank you for the reminder. I just have a couple of areas to question you on, and we're almost through. So, we're at the Faculty of Law, and we've already mentioned you running into your former boss, the General, who had been the former Minister of National Defense and the Minister of Public Works. And it is in your book, on page 29 in English, in Khmer it's 005888140 to 141, and French it's 0058783 to 36. In English it's 0058756 to 665. Here in the book that you wrote, you indicate that the General told you a couple of reasons why Phnom Penh had fallen. One being that there was a secret agreement that did not materialize with the Khmer Rouge, and then the other was that the United States government had been providing secretly information to the Khmer Rouge. Do you recall writing about that? Do you recall writing about it?
Response, yes, I do, Sam.
Now, and this is what you say about it. Because you're claiming that the General told you that the Americans had deliberately accelerated the country's downfall. Quote, we had secret codes for communicating with our units, unquote. This is what the General's saying. Each time we tried to contact our troops, we heard the voices of a Khmer Rouge officer. Apparently, the Americans had handed over our codes to the other side. And this is what I want to ask you about. You go on to say, it sounded ridiculous. Why should the Americans deliberately betray their allies? But now, listening to the General, it all began to make a weird sort of sense, for the two stories complemented each other. The Americans were faced with disaster anyway, but they knew the Khmer Rouge to consist of two factions, the radical pro-Chinese and Sihanouk's moderates, now apparently being wooed by the Russians. From the American point of view, it would surely be better for the country's new rulers to be pro-Chinese than pro-Russian. So the Americans might well have attempted to undermine the plot to form a pro-Russian coalition. Do you recall writing that, sir?
Response. Yes, I do. And on that part, I would like to confirm that that's my position, and I wish to reconfirm this.
Okay. Now,
or if you wish me to explain further on that, and I'm pleased to do that.
well, thank you for asking me to give you the opportunity to explain. We're going to go step by step, and I assure you I will give you the opportunity to explain, but you're going to have to keep it short. But first, when you wrote this, when you wrote this passage, this is 1987. But you're saying here, but now listening to the general, it all began to make a weird sort of sense. Did you mean to tell us that when you were listening to the general back then, April 18th, 19th, 1975, that what the general was telling you made sense and that you believed him?
Response. Yes, I did believe him. And what he said to me was made out of his honest speech. I don't know whether he lied that to me, but it was an honest piece of information.
And you believed him?
Response. Yes, I did.
And it sounds like, from what I just heard earlier, that you continue to believe what the general had told you.
Response. Yes, I did.
All right. Now, here's what I want to ask you, because earlier, remember, I started by asking you if you did some research in writing the book, and you said no. So now I would like to ask you, based on what information or what makes you believe what you heard from the general? What's the basis of your belief, other than what you, knowing the general and knowing that he would not lie to you?
Response. I think I may need more time to elaborate on this because I already put it all in the book. I am telling all the truth to the chamber and to you, but I wish to also add that when it comes to the Khmer Rouge tendency, there are two folds of tendency. One for the people who supported then Prince Norodom Sihanouk and those who supported the Khmer Rouge. And when I met the Khmer Rouge first time at Wat Onalam or Onalam pagodas, those people were wearing khaki uniform. And that's what we saw. And when Mr. Thapanangan talked that there was a negotiation for peace, so that everyone from different faction could join to build peace. And he also emphasized that if the negotiation broke, then there would be the Republican forces created so that weapons and supply could be provided to them and supported by an outsider so that the power was balanced. I mean, the balance between the two forces. And they envisaged that there would be a coalition government in which the policy of the FUNC could be used as the basis for these efforts. And I also was convinced that that policy was not in favor of communism. It's more like a middle path policy. And I also wish to also add that people who, apart from Lon Nol, did not leave country although they lost the war. Why they did not leave the country? There were Lon Nun and Long Boret and other senior officials who remained in the country because they were still convinced that such peace would be created and they could work together.
If I could ask you to clarify the other point, which I think may be equally as important and interesting, where you say that the Americans faced with disaster anyway. They knew the Khmer Rouge to consist of two factions, the radical pro-Chinese and Sihanouk's moderate, now apparently being wooed by the Russians. From the American point of view, it would surely be better for the country's new rulers to be pro-Chinese than pro-Russian, which is why the Americans were trying to undermine the pro-Russian coalition, this is what you're saying. That's the point that I'm interested in you elaborating on. What makes you, what's the basis of your information? Why do you believe the general when he says that the Americans were working in supporting the radical pro-Chinese because that was their preference?
Response. I believe that you have not fully covered the points I wrote in the book. It was not Mr. Thapana Ngin alone who talked about the Americans. It was I who believed that it was most likely that it was the American. And I discussed this with other friends, and I met with another military personnel who were wearing civilian uniform, and he shared with me about the situation. He said that when he contacted people at the battlefield, the response he got was from the Khmer Rouge. So he believed that it was the Americans who were behind this, and they could have known that our people were joining force. And the Americans would like to do its best to make sure that a coalition would not be formed ultimately. And at a later stage, I also obtained some information from people from the Russian embassy, because the people at the embassy were driven from the embassy to take refuge at the French embassy. So I drew a conclusion, and I did not base my arguments on the information I obtained from this general alone, but I based my argument or conclusion on the information I obtained from my observation from various sources.
Thank you very much. So, in other words, if I understand you correctly, this is the American policy that you believe was in play at the time, based on your observations and your experience. Because today you talked about policies from 75 to 79. I suspect this is a policy by the Americans that you've concluded was in play at the time.
Response. I may wish to correct the timeline. It's not about 1975. It's after Ronald regime was toppled down. Indeed, at the beginning, the American fully supported the Ronald regime.
I understand. What I'm trying to get is, and the point that I'm trying to establish is, this is an American policy as you understood it to be at the time. At that particular time, this was the American policy that was being executed here. Just as you've told us about policies that the Khmer Rouge may have had, this is a policy that you come to understand and believe by the Americans.
Response. It's not all the case. At that time, Americans lost the war or were defeated. They tried to win the war, but after all, they were defeated. So by that time, they had to really decide to whom they give this power to, and they believed that the Chinese would be the one who was closer to the Americans than the Russian. The President, Council Kanawaz, the time is perhaps appropriate already for you to finish putting questions.
I have another line of questioning, which is only one area. This took a lot longer than I thought it would, but we have the entire day. Half a day was allocated to us, Judge. Half a day. Half a day they, half a day us. Not half a day minus a portion for the witness, the civil party. So the Nunchia team had no questions. I was told that there were no questions.
The President, Council, please be reminded that the Chamber already informed you at the beginning that you should allocate some time also for the civil party to state his statement of suffering, and to us it appeared that you consent to that. And we still have counsels for Mr. Kilsumpon who have not had the opportunity to put questions to the civil party. We understand that time cannot be allocated equally, practically.
The civil party should have approximately 15 to 20 minutes to tell his side of suffering. I have one question to ask the gentleman about one passage that he wrote. And it's on Khmer page 00588-172 to 173. Now, if I'm not allowed to ask the question, I intend to read the portion into the record so it's abundantly clear where I'm being cut off by the trial chamber. And it's page 53 in English, and in French it's 00587864.
The President, Council, please hold on. The President, Council, Kanawasa, please read the statement you wish to do that.
Page 53 in English, I already gave the ERN numbers. And he states, we stayed at Prek Tatong for 1 week resting the children. The children were carefree, playing in and around the pagoda. My student brought food. I tried fishing, but without success. It didn't matter. Life here was easier than at Chu Kamau. The locals, new people and ancients alike, were engaged in building a dam. Their timetable was more flexible than ours had been, with work starting at 9 and ending at 3. There was nowhere near the same dedication to work, either from the Khmer Rouge or the workers themselves. My student told me how all the Khmer Rouge leaders here were from the area, used to local habits, and knowing the locals personally, they were more indulgent. And this is the passage I was going to put to the gentleman, having read this as a predicate. This confirmed my general impression that there was no established rule for the whole country. In the absence of published laws, discipline varied at the whim of each village chief. For some, at least, that was good. Life must still be acceptable in many areas, I told myself, despite the evacuation, the separation, and the deaths. At the end of 1 week, our little holiday came to an abrupt end. So the question that I was going to put to the gentleman was, does he still stand by this passage that at the time, based on his experience in this particular location and all his other experiences, that he came to the conclusion that the situation was not uniform in the entire country of Cambodia, but it varied from place to place depending on who was in charge of the area. And I think it's a most relevant question. So either he can answer the question or I can take my leave at this point in time. I'm at your disposal.
Response. I stand by what I wrote in the book. However, I'd like to add some clarifications. That was what happened at the time during the initial 3 months after we were evacuated from Phnom Penh. That was when we were under the organizations of the revolutionary Angkar, and if you read the book in its entity, and it is my attempt to make the analysis, for the first evacuation, the old regime was fully resolved. There was no longer a capitalist regime. Of course, life became sometimes a bit less difficult in certain places. However, the main goal of the Khmer Rouge had already been achieved by then.
I have no further questions, Your Honors. Thank you very much, sir. On behalf of Mr. Ingsuri, Mr. Angwadom, and I would like to thank you for coming here, and best of luck. Thank you.
President, I'd like now to give the floor to Kiev Sampon's defense. Counsel, thank you, Mr. President. Good afternoon, Your Honor, everyone. And good afternoon, Mr. Bennett Yathai. My name is Kung Samon, counsel for Mr. Kiev Sampon. I have only a few questions for you. My first question is related to your parents. In your document D22/3649, in English 00, in Khmer rather 0056 8935, and on English page 0009 3877, French 0056 8928. In that document, you stated that your father's name is Pen Thoi and your mother's name is Hai Thang. And the question is why the names in this document are different from your statement that you made to this chamber this morning. Response. Thank you, counsel, for putting this question to me and giving me the opportunity to clarify the matter to the chamber regarding the differences in the names. When the President asked me the question for my mother and father's names, and I said the truth, Lien Chao was my father's name, and Lien Lon was my mother's name. But in the official document, my father's name is Pen Thoi, and my mother's name is Hai Thang. The reason is that I was born in Udong, and when I was about 7 or 8 years old, my parents sent me to study in Phnom Penh since I was in the primary school, and I did not have my birth certificate, and there I lived with my distant cousin, and then she put me as her son. Or you can say they were actually my godparents, and I stayed with them until the conclusion of my education in Phnom Penh. Counsel, thank you for your clarification. Question. You stated that you participated in the first evacuation from Phnom Penh to Konda province, and subsequently you volunteered to leave Konda province for Udong, but instead of going to Udong, you were sent to another location. My question is, every time you left from one place to another, and as you said that you volunteered to do so, why did you volunteer to move from one location to another? Response. I believe I already responded to this question. We were told that anyone wanted to go to our native village could go. Of course, we all wanted to return to our native village where we were familiar with the settings and with the people. For that reason, I volunteered to go. That's the first reason for my volunteer. Thank you. Question. What about other peoples, if you know? Did those people also volunteer for the movement from one place to another? President, with civil party, please observe some pause. Civil party, for those people who were in the same village, for example, from Chư Khmer to Sromo Liu, they were all volunteered. And in Sromo Liu, when we left Sromo Liu for Battambong, we also volunteered as we raised our hands. But when we were in Ongroka Pagoda, I met other people who came from various other villages, and some of them were asked to come, not on a voluntary basis. Thank you. Question. What did you know about the policy changes after the 17th April 1975? Can you describe briefly regarding the political situation after that day? Response. The events that took place on 17 April 1975 was kind of many events occurred rapidly, and it is difficult to describe in chronology. Question. What I want to know is for you to tell us of what you knew, whether what the regime would become after the victory of the Khmer Rouge, that is, immediately after the liberation and later during the regime. Response. Based on my understanding and knowledge, I never thought that it would have become that worst. The worst that I thought was that they would implement the policies of the front. And secondly, I never thought that the Khmer Rouge would temper us until we lost our lives, and that we were sent for tampering at the base of the Krobang Mountain. I could never imagine that. Of course, in my mind, I surely believe that they needed educated people, the technicians or the engineers. And even while I was en route, I still held to that expectation. Questioned. What is your understanding regarding the market closure after the liberation of 17 April 1975? Response. As I indicated, the above organization or Angkar Le had their clear plan, which was preconceived. One plan was to completely clear the remnants of the old regime, the markets or transactions which were remnants of the old regime. For that reason, they completely closed the market. Thank you. Question. You also said about your life, that you try to survive, to become better during the Democratic Cambodia regime by bartering your belonging for food, your clothing for food, for instance. My question is, did you conduct the transaction with any particular group of people? Response. During the first phase of people's evacuation, that is commencing from April 1975 until September 1975, bartering was kind of easy-going with the base people. And when we were in Viet Vung, which was a second phase of evacuation, bartering still existed, but it was with the base people or the Khmer Rouge families. It was possible at the time, that is during the 4-month period from September through December 1975. It's because there was no communal dining. We ate separately. So for that reason, we could barter for food. However, starting from January 1976, it was a communal meal and all cooking utensils were confiscated. And if they found us having rice in our pot at home, we would have been in trouble or killed. So life became miserable, and I lost 11 members of my family by then. Thank you. Question. You indicated this morning that corruption existed during the Khmer Rouge regime. For example, regarding the rice ration and the distribution of the rice, and that the Khmer Rouge cadres in Jobas kept some of those rice rations, in particular in Pusat province. As the rice ration itself did not reach all the people, and they kept some of the rice for their personal gain. My question is the following. How did you know about that? Response. In fact, we could not say that the Khmer Rouge retains the rice ration and the distribution was not sufficient. I said that initially there were about 5,000 of us, but some of us died. So the Khmer Rouge could say that only 500 people died, but in fact 1,000 people died. So then they could keep the ration for the 500 people who died. And why I said so? Because I saw those Khmer Rouge families, they bartered for things, for watch and gold, for instance, with the rice. And how could they obtain the rice? They could only do so through this personal gain. And that it means they kept the rice for those people who actually died. So it means the more people die, the more rice they would have. Thank you. Question. Does it mean that the rice that they kept for their personal gain was not a policy from the upper echelon, but it was the personal gain made by the cadres at the base? Response. I believe so. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Panyathai. I have no further question, Mr. President, for this civil party. President, thank you. Mr. Panyathai, in your capacity as a civil party, and as you have been informed this morning, that you would be given the opportunity to make a statement of suffering and harm inflicted upon you physically, emotionally, and materially, which were the direct result of the crimes occurred during the regime. And those crimes were alleged against the three accused, that is, Nuchi, Ingsari, and Keo Sampon. If you wish to make such a statement, you are now given the opportunity. The floor is yours. Civil Party, thank you, Mr. President. Good afternoon once again, Mr. President, Your Honors, and good afternoon, everyone in and around the courtroom. We all know that many people died. Is there any new family that did not lose a family member? Many people died. My younger brother and my younger sister's families died. And even with my family itself, my wife and 3 children, and the extended family members, there were the 18 of us, as are indicated this morning, all died except myself that survived. And that I have the opportunity to testify before this chamber today. And to start with, I'd like to express my satisfaction and happiness for the establishment of this court and for the opportunity that is given to me as a victim that I lived through the Khmer Rouge regime and what I experienced and the harms that inflicted upon me, and not just about the money, about the house, but it's the loss of my career, my profession, my life, my wife, my children, and my parents and relatives. Although the court establishment is rather late and that it has been smeared with the various issues, but I believe the chamber is of a historical nature in order to find justice for the Cambodian people. In particular, this chamber conducts its hearing transparently, and that it has its means to do so for, in order to fulfill its mandate under the tight scrutiny of national and international observers. At this junction, I have only one suggestion to make to the chamber. I want the prosecution to complete as soon as possible so that justice can be done either for me and for all the victims. And in order to achieve this goal, I'd like to appeal with my honesty to all the 3 accused who used to be the leading revolutionary who had high ideology, that you should adhere to your high responsibility within the context of history, and that you should volunteer yourself for your self-criticism, for your leadership of the revolution during the time that you were fully in power. And if you, the accused, are willing to conduct your self-criticism, you will clearly see the undeniable result through invaluable and countless evidence, namely the countless graves and mass graves and pits throughout the country. And that is the mass crimes committed by the revolutionary Angkar. Angkar destroys hundreds and thousands of Cambodian souls for no reason. And that is merely to implement the communist ideology rooted in a sound theory, but that it would not be acceptable by a lay person. The leadership by the revolutionary Angkar destroyed a beautiful and abundant country, and that led it to a poorest level, and that its citizens was in its harm way unimaginable. One main mistake by the revolutionary Angkar was its pride on this collective ideology rather than to find solutions for its own people's happiness, which was the main responsibility of a leader of a country in general. you cannot deny that you did not know what happened because Angkar itself made an announcement that Angkar was everywhere. Angkar had eyes, as many eyes as the pineapple's eyes, throughout the Cambodian territory. And after you conduct your self-criticism, you, the three accused, should confess your crimes willingly and honestly, so that you can still be proud to be your exemplary revolutionary for the misdeeds that you conducted. And finally, after you make your confessions, of course, it would be modest for you to express your apology to the lost souls of the victims and the surviving victims who are still living today. And if you can afford to do that, I believe this trial chamber can conclude its mandate very soon with its purpose of finding the truth and justice for the people achieved completely. It's been 38 years that has passed through a great tragedy occurred in Cambodia. And we are all advancing in our age. And we should do something so that we could relieve our mentality, our feeling for the remaining of our lives. And I strongly believe if my appeal is heard and accepted and analyzed and make a positive decision by the three accused, we, the three victims, would be relieved greatly. All the bad memories, angers, sorrow would gradually dissipate from our mind and feeling. And of course, national reconciliation will be achieved for the sake of our children and generation and for our country. Thank you, Mr. President. President, thank you, Mr. Panyathai. The hearing of your testimony as a civil party has come to a conclusion. You are therefore excused. And of course, your testimony may contribute to ascertaining the truth. In this case, you may return to your residence or wherever you wish to do so, and we wish you all the best. Court officer, in collaboration with the visual unit, please assist Mr. Panyathai for him to return to his residence or wherever he wishes to do. Mr. Panyathai, you may now leave the courtroom. President, I'd like now to give the floor to the parties to make their remarks or observations regarding the scope of the testimony of the civil party Panyathai, if you wish to do so. I observe that there is no party who wishes to do such a remark. The Chamber would like to inform the parties and the public that tomorrow and next week the Chamber will not conduct any hearing due to the health issue of the accused Nuon Chea, who is being treated at the Khmer Soviet Friendship Hospital since the night of the 2nd February 2013, and he is still being treated at the hospital, and he does not waive his right for the hearing or testimony of a witness or a civil party or an expert who is to be heard next. And today's hearing has come to a conclusion. The court is now adjourned and it will resume on Monday the 18th of February commencing from 9 a.m. The hearing on Monday the 18th of February 2013, the Chamber will hear the testimony of the expert Elizabeth Becker. This information is for the public and for the parties. Security guards, you are instructed to take Mr. Kirsampon and Insari back to the detention facility and have them return on Monday the 18th of February 2013 prior to 9 a.m. on the 18th of February. And for Mr. Insari, take him to the holding cell downstairs. Regarding the presence of Noon Chia, the Chamber will inform the parties later when we receive further information from Noon Chia. The court is now adjourned.
សូមចេញក្រោកឈរ